is their learning continuity during the COVID-19 pandemic. The global outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic has spread worldwide, affecting almost all countries and territories. The outbreak was first identified in December 2019 in Wuhan, China. The countries around the world cautioned the public to take responsive care. Lockdown and staying home strategies have been put in place as needed action to flatten the curve and control the transmission of the disease. Its widespread havoc affecting us in many ways, making us go through we now call new normal. One of the many shocks of the pandemic is its backwash on our educational learning. According to United Nations, it has created the largest disruption of education system in history, affecting nearly 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries and all continents. Closures of schools and other learning spaces have impacted 94% of the world's student population, up to 99% in low and lower middle income countries. Despite the current situation, educators, schools, institutes, and the government have developed methods in support of education and training continuity, from radio and television to take-home packages. And for that, it is for a fact that there is still continuity, thanks to our leaders and innovators. But in the context of learning, is continuity equal to efficiency? Does it reach its objective on reaching out to students who are now out of school grounds because of the pandemic? As cited by Salan, DepEd pointed out that to properly address how education will continue amidst the pandemic we are facing now, DepEd created the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. As we identified that face-to-face classes will not be safe for everyone, schools must find ways for learning to continue amidst threat and uncertainties brought about by COVID-19, while ensuring the health, safety, and well-being of all learners, teachers, and personnel of the department. Learning is essential for us to continue to grow and flourish as individuals, even amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's what distance learning aims to do. Distance learning refers to the learning modality where learning takes place between the teacher and the learner who are remote from each other during the actual period of instruction. This type of learning has three types, namely modular distance learning, online distance learning, and television radio-based instruction. Modular distance learning allows learners to utilize self-learning modules or SLMs in print or digital format. Online distance learning, on the other hand, featured the teacher facilitating learning that would encourage learners' active participation using various learning platforms and technologies accessed on the internet, such as Google Meet, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams, among others. Meanwhile, TV radio-based instruction makes use of self-learning modules converted to video lessons for either television-based instruction or radio script for radio-based instruction. However, the reality is far from the ideal outcome. Due to the lockdown, many families from low and middle class groups and in remote areas could not attain the needs and equipment for the so-called distance learning. Even if they do so, students are more occupied on household chores or in helping with their financial needs. Parents and caretakers, a vital part of distance learning, officiates the students as a substitute to teachers but could not do so because they have to work harder to support their family. In addition, students now focus more on submitting rather than the actual learning. This and many more factors hindered the learning continuity even with the existence of distance learning. A survey of 1,500 families nationwide from Parents Together Action found lower income parents are 10 times more likely to say their child is doing little or no remote learning compared to higher income parents. The data from the organization also shows 13% of students from low-income households lack a device or internet access, compared to 1% of students from families making more than $50,000 annually, and only about 1 in 3 families report that students always have a place free of distraction for remote learning. Moreover, the amount of time spent by children and adults on education-related activities varied dramatically in the month before resumption of classes. Among enrolled children, 16% spent no time on educational activities, 6 either by themselves or with a parent in the previous 7 days, while 22% spent 21 hours or more. If these differences persist, they will likely lead to significant learning inequality. Low-income families' lack of time and support. Because many facilities and industries are closing right now due to the pandemic, the number of problems of low-income families facing now just doubled. Nearly 50% of the responding parents in a new study of low-income families said that they had lost their jobs or had decreased work hours and experienced food insecurity, according to Georgetown psychology professor Anna Johnson. Hustling to pay the bills and other expenses to fend for their family's needs while attending and facilitating to their child's education is just not plausible, making home-based learners struggle due to the lack of guidance. According to Garcia, parental involvement in children's education is an integral component of young children's academic achievement. In the Philippines, a developing country with high rates of poverty and input deficit in basic education, school dropout rates are high, especially among the poor. Given that many children from disadvantaged backgrounds do not get enough support, and many parents are not equipped with skills to support their children's education. Previous research has documented the impact of poverty on PI. For example, household income is an important predictor of PI. With children from high-income families receiving greater parental support, maintained that low-income parents might not possess adequate social and cultural capital to feel comfortable connecting with the school. Similarly, Laurie asserts that social class shapes the nature of family-school relationships, with parents from low-income backgrounds being more likely to trust teachers' judgment as professionals, resulting in lower levels of parental involvement as traditionally conceptualized in the literature. Slow internet and stack of workload. Given that the student does have access to gadgets like cell phones, computers, or laptops, finding or getting proper and fast internet signal could still be a struggle. That and the number of stack of workloads, making students frustrated or distracted. Of course, if one does have the capacity to afford a good, strong network, then they won't have a problem. But how about the rest that could not have both equipment and internet? Among families, the proportion of poor families in 2018 was estimated at 12.1%, which is equivalent to around 3 million families. Statistics show that the literacy rate in the Philippines has steadily increased year on year for the past 40 years. Unfortunately, the numbers do not show the reality of the state of how education is delivered on the ground. Underneath the statistics, there is a glaring divide between the rich and the poor. Many poor students and teachers cannot afford to buy the necessary equipment for online learning, while the rich can afford unlimited internet access. The poor can barely pay for the metered mobile data packages. And while some students can afford to study in the safety of their homes, others put themselves at risk just so that they are not left behind in their education. For instance, some students need to climb on the roof of their houses, on the trees, or on mountains just to find a stronger internet connection. Some do so even while peddling food and cigarettes in the streets. Lack of references. Part of the process of efficient learning is to have a lot of reliable references. Sadly, not everyone could attain them. The ideal thing is to have 2 or more references for a student to effectively learn or study the lesson, especially now that teachers and advisors are not present to oversee their students. In terms of modular learning, the things that are written in the module are often incomplete or nothing at all, so students must find or research them themselves. This became a dilemma for students, especially to slow and poor learners. Not to mention the students that mainly rely on textbooks given by their instructors because they could not access the internet. Instructional materials enhance the teaching-learning process by exhibiting information necessary to acquire knowledge and skills. The acquisition of basic vocational knowledge, skills, and attitudes to facilitate occupational efficiency requires skill-oriented teaching and learning activities. However, when considering the earlier example where students engage less with technology despite having additional flexibility and freedom of choice, it becomes apparent that it may not necessarily be the medium that is the preference. In a study of institutional related challenges, most of respondents, or 95%, received study materials late or never got them. In this situation, students are affected academically, psychologically, and financially. Lack of study materials may force students to submit assignments that are not properly written, and they are likely to get to examinations without enough preparation, resulting in poor performance. Such poor performance may not be the true reflection of their academic abilities. Some students may persist at a slow pace, resulting in late completion of programs. Others withdraw from studies. Conclusion. As was reflected on this paper, factors like low-income families, lack of time and support, slow internet and stack of workloads, and lack of references affect the efficient learning of students during the pandemic. Although despite these problems, it does not mean that there is no learning continuity. To have been enrolled and registered to a learning institution just proves that there is learning continuity even amidst the pandemic. It's just not efficient. But by addressing these concerns, parents, students, educators, and policymakers can see through this and employ or make considerations to improve the efficiency of learning despite the current situation we are facing now. And that is the end of my position paper.